Hello. I thought today I'd share with you a reading from the letter attributed to James, chapter 5, verses 7 and 8. Be patient, therefore, beloved, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains. You also must be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Now, an interesting thing about our scriptures is that whenever it says to be patient and to wait for the Lord, it doesn't mean to be inactive. It doesn't mean to be sitting around and waiting. We see that in Advent. Waiting, anticipating the coming of the Lord is something that's filled with activity, preparing for our celebration of Christmas. And I think that waiting especially, remember, James was writing in a time where virtually everyone was either a farmer or connected to agriculture in some way. Even in the cities, people had gardens and were connected to the commerce of agriculture. And we see that today in our own hometowns often. Waiting for the rains or waiting through the winter for the time of spring planting, farmers are not idle. They're not sitting around waiting. That's when cleaning up the equipment, preparing the equipment, making sure everything is in working order. If you have livestock, there's even more activity, making sure that the livestock is cared for over the winter months. And even waiting for the rains once things are planted, we're not idle. The farmers now are digging trenches and drain tile and making sure the conditions are optimal for the growing season. So the same was true back in the ancient world. Waiting was not just simply sitting idly by and waiting for something. It involved activity. I saw a video the other day on YouTube or Facebook. Somebody shared something with me, and it was a wilderness guide showing people how to get outside of quicksand. They were all in kind of warm jackets, windbreakers, and sweaters, and they were walking on the beach, and they got to a part where the sand was very wet, and they started stomping on it, and created basically a pool of quicksand. And the guide, a young woman, sank down up to her, just above her knees, mid-thigh, in the quicksand. And she said that if you start to struggle, the properties of the quicksand will just draw you, suck you deeper and deeper into the quicksand. And the closest thing I could come up with was quicksand was oobleck, which kids love oobleck. Some adults love oobleck. It's cornstarch and water, and it has both properties of both a solid and a liquid. You're going to see, I'm going to take this ladle, and I'm going to see it's a solid. It kind of hits like that. But if I take the fork in there, it just kind of slides in like it's a liquid, and I can stir it. I don't know if you can see that well there. Okay, I'm going to have to do the ladle again because you didn't see it. Here, look. But now, when you're stuck in quicksand, you get both your legs in there, and you get stuck. Now, if you struggle, it just holds you further and further and drags you further down. But if you rest on one leg, and remember, it's a mixture of solid, of sand, and of water, and it has properties of both solid and liquid. And so if you put your weight on one leg and wiggle the other so that it becomes more of a liquid, so the water mixes with the sand more and creates a little pocket where you get that one leg out. You don't try to pull it out. You just let it kind of float to the top. And then you take advantage of the property that it's a solid and put it there, and it will support your weight while you wiggle the other leg and get it out. And then you've got both, and then you take advantage that it's the property of a solid, and you can kind of ease your way to the shore. You can search on YouTube probably for that video and see it even more clearly, but you get the idea that sometimes the very thing that we feel is trapping us has properties to it that will release us and even support us as we find our freedom. The isolation we're going through right now is kind of like that. People are getting anxious. and worried and feeling more and more lonely. But the isolation also gives us something that we don't always have: time. Now, if you're missing your grandchildren, for instance, especially at Easter, you didn't have a chance to do Easter egg hunts with them, or everything had to be done from the car, sitting in the car and watching them search for Easter eggs, and everything had to be done kind of at a distance, and you couldn't just reach out and hug them. Well, take this time to give them a gift that they will cherish the rest of their lives. Start recording a family history. Ask them what questions they have about you, about what it was like when you were growing up. If the great-grandparents are around, that's even better. Interview them. What was it like when they were growing up? What was it like when you were growing up? What shows did you watch on television? Or what shows did you listen to on radio, if it's a few years more than behind the television? What games did you play? How did you go to school? What did you learn in school? What were your teachers' names? When you were playing games at home, when you were watching TV at home, the couch you were sitting on, where did your parents buy that couch? Sears and Roebuck? Who's Roebuck? What's a catalog? Catalog was something you ordered from before you had online ordering. Tell them what your life was like. Write it down if you feel more comfortable writing rather than recording. But believe me, that will be something they will cherish for years to come. And ask them the same questions. Ask them to take the time, if they can't go out with their friends, ask them to write down what makes their friends special to them. Talk to them about how they make decisions about who they play with, who they hang around with, depending on what age and what language you want to use with them. But ask them to think about their lives as you think about yours. You'll find that even being physically distant, the right conversations will bring you closer and closer together. The same thing that gives you anxiety, the isolation and the overabundance of time, will be something that will actually set you free and draw you closer to one another. Another aspect of the isolation and what we're going through right now is the economic insecurity, the financial insecurity that so many people are experiencing. And we here at the church, we do have assistance funds, and I know H&S is gearing up their pantry, and their assistance, their ability to assist others. And I know the stimulus checks are coming out, and I know we're all going to be okay. But if you need help in the meantime, reach out to us. That's one of the things the church is here for, is to embrace one another. And I'll tell you, when we were in seminary, Sue ran a daycare operation out of our apartment. She supported us when I was in seminary, and things went pretty well most of the time, but we ran into some times where our apartment key, everyone's apartment key at the seminary, fit a locker that we had over in the basement of Schultz Hall, and it was a food pantry. And there was one time where I had to go and use that locker, and it just grated on me. I wondered what I was doing, dragging my family there to attend seminary or to live in the seminary while I was there, and we were poor. So we took some pasta and some sauce, and we ate dinner for a couple of days until the next week when when the checks came for Sue's clients for the daycare. And next time we went to the store, we replaced the pasta and the sauce. I just felt I had to do that, but it taught me something. It gave me greater empathy. I think this isolation can give us greater empathy. I think we can learn from it. And so if you do need help, we don't want anyone going to bed hungry, and we don't want any parents going to bed worried about their children being hungry the next day, or worried about paying a utility bill or something like that. So please reach out. It can teach us empathy and understanding for people who go through this sort of thing all the time. We will become better Christians in the process. The thing that makes us feel trapped can actually release us into a more joyful and closer relationship with Jesus Christ. as we think about what Jesus would be doing in this kind of situation. Find the things in isolation, this self-isolating time, that will give you opportunities to find the strength and the release that you need. And the anxiety will start to slip away. That is what being patient is. It's not waiting and worrying and wringing our hands. It is actively doing something to serve God, to grow closer to God, to prepare to welcome the Lord into our hearts in an ever deeper and more meaningful way. So be patient, but don't be idle. God bless you. Amen.